with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker.
Shelly Walters with the Shelly and Walters Realty Group at FC Tucker.
David.Mccoige with Tucker Mortgage.
Ross.bromstrup with Tucker Mortgage.
And bear with us, we got new audio equipment, thankfully, finally, and we're learning to navigate it today. And it has been eventful, I think, to say the least. We have a tablecloth to cover the wires. I'm not sure why. I don't think you guys are offended by the wires, but for some reason it felt more professional. So this is what we're doing today. So we'll work on that.
But we know you can see the table up there, so.
Right. People
Next
come
time will
for our content more than they come for our aesthetics, I think. So anyways.
True.
But
Speaking of content,
yeah. So
we have Tucker Mortgage to answer all kinds of questions for us today.
Yeah, we wanted to get into a bunch of, as we're getting into the end of the year, a bunch of resources for consumers, specifically like around property taxes, but also as the rates are dropping, which you guys can talk about, and then options out there, because we have lost a little bit of buying power and stuff like that. And there's options out there, right? And then there's also some resources to help protect the consumers with spam calls and stuff like that, and with title and things of that nature. So we really wanted to jump into that stuff a lot today as we're getting towards the end of the year. And we'll get into the stats. I mean, the rates have gone down, obviously, quite a bit here in the past. It's been a trend for what, you want to say, like past 20 days, maybe, that they've slowly started to trickle, but we've seen some big jumps, right?
But we want to see from you guys, what is that doing to you? What are you seeing, buyers coming back? Because we keep saying, if the rates go down a lot or a good amount, next spring is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
They've just started to trickle down a little bit. What have you seen activity-wise? We know our phone started to ring again, so what do you
Demand
guys?
is definitely up.
Yeah.
So
about 10 days
what was
ago.
the rate? What was the rate change that you started to see? Like, what was the point?
So
Probably
government
dropping below 8% was probably, that was a big number. I mean, we were for a while 8.5, a little bit over that, and once they
8.25,
dropped, 7.99 that first day, I feel like the phone started ringing some more. People are like, okay, are they going to continue to go? People are watching it when they see it in the sevens, and now we're in the low sevens.
Yeah, you sent it out yesterday. It was 7.3, right? I mean,
our Govy loans too were in the upper sixes, 6.75. So that's, and we were low sevens for a while.
Yeah,
so
we were
half
maybe
a point
within the last 3 weeks, 7 5/8 on a government loan, and now we're 6 3/4 or below.
Yeah, and new construction was just really hard to beat here, probably over the past 6 months. But I saw something come from a builder the other day, and I think their rate was 5.75, something like that. And we're not that far off anymore. Like suddenly it's starting to even out a little bit more, where it's not as big of a gap, right?
Well, speaking of that, like I see the 4.99s on a lot of the builders. And so I was talking to an agent. They have, and I've done this before too. You know, when people buy a house brand new and have to sell it within a year or two, they're really competing against all the new builds. And whether or not a person wants a brand new build, first of all, you can save time on having to wait for it to be built. The house is still, obviously, should be in pretty good shape. Has
it's under
all the
warranty.
warranties.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't compete with it, 8% versus 4.99. But all they have to do is say, I will match the builder's interest rate, which comes into the 2-1 buy down or buy the points, because then you're even Steven with the buyers again. So that is just a really good way if you're trying to sell a house only 1 or 2 years old. You can match those, right? I mean, if you're going from 4 to 4.99, what would be the cost? Let's just say on a $500,000 house.
There's a lot more to take into account besides that. Sometimes it's hard to even buy the rates that low.
Okay.
So what the builders are
Depends
doing
on what they
buying
qualify for
pools of
first,
money.
right?
Okay.
So that they're going to guarantee we're going to deliver so many loans.
But you could
at
get it
that
down
rate.
enough
get it
with
down
a 2-1
close
buy
enough.
down or something like that.
Absolutely.
Still,
Doing a
don't
temporary buy
just
down
leave
could-
it open.
could get it.
Yeah. So that was one thing that was pretty interesting as we see these rates get lower. The builders are here, but we're getting closer to here, so a seller could even try to get closer.
if it's a home that's a year old, or something like that, then yeah, absolutely the buy down program, comes into play. And as long as the seller's, on board with it,
Right.
it's a way to get back, if qualifying rate's 7.25, your potential buyer is at 5.25,
Right.
the first year. So
And it's just how you teach your seller about why they should look at that situation as a possible way to get a buyer.
Opens it up to more buyers.
I just think
Gives you a better
education
price.
matters more than it's ever mattered before. And I hate to say something like that because it's always mattered, but there's just so many other variables now to put you in the best scenario, and it is dependent on property by property, quite honestly, right? And
Right.
so I just think as an agent, you got to have the resources with the loan officer who can navigate this, because you may set up a scenario for somebody off of one house that totally changes off the next house, right? And they need to be in communication with you and with us, and like, hey, we're looking at this one today. If we write on this, how does this change it? And I just think they're
going from existing to new construction.
100%,
perfect,
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because we're Tucker Mortgage, we're more, driven towards existing homes. Builders have seller concessions. They have profit margins that they have built in, and that's how they're able to offer those interest rates at 4.9%. And they're the ones that they have they could have an affiliation, with that lender where they're controlling the margins too. My wife and we own a Lennar home, and their marketing is everything's inclusive.
Yep.
So they've got the numbers figured out.
Well, I know in the past I've had you give me the little flyer to put together for my specific house for my seller to offer the 2-1 buy down. It's just reaching out to you guys and saying, here at 123 Main Street, we want to offer the 2-1 buy down. Can you please put it together in a nice format so everybody understands?
We give it to you to the penny,
right?
Because it's based on the rate. What's the today's current qualifying rate,
right? But I think that's
the loan
helpful.
amount.
The buyer sees it, the buyer's agent who may not understand one. Obviously, the buyers probably don't understand it. My seller, I can now sell it to them of why they should do this. So everybody understands it. So we, just reach out to you.
It's great having it in black and white where they can see, wow, this is what it's going to save me. I'm going to save $500 a month for the first year.
And the
That's
seller to see what's it going to
buyer.
cost me, other
Right.
than a price drop. Well, we talk about how you don't want to really do a price drop if you can do it to 2-1 buy down. But another thing the sellers can offer, we were talking to you guys about, is the assumable mortgage potentially available for our sellers, for their current buyers. And so, we've talked to you about this, and you say, it's not that easy. It's not just, okay, you can assume it. So what do we do if we have a seller that has a 2.9 interest rate? I mean, that's another great offer to a buyer to come to our house compared to another house if they can assume the rate. So can you explain to us that process?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you need to do is find out if their mortgage is assumable.
Right.
They have a low rate. If they have an FHA loan or a VA loan, they're all assumable. So every one of those is.
But some of that comes with complexity itself, though. Just some of the things we were talking about with that, like before we even get into like the process of it. So, we looked at one, or we were talking about one where somebody was going to buy it to assume it as an investment property, but you can't do that because it has to be a primary residence, right? It has to have for FHA guidelines, right? And so even though it's transferring, it would still need that ownership stake in it, right? And then with VA, you lose a portion of your VA eligibility of whatever the dollar amount of that house is, right? And so even all of that stuff becomes pretty complicated in case-by-case scenario, quite honestly, but it's a thing, and I've seen it marketed. I personally haven't seen it marketed correctly or well, because it's thrown out there like just anybody can do it, which is also not accurate, right? And when you start looking at it, it's very case by case for buyer and seller, in my opinion. But if you do have a property that would qualify for it, it is a good thing. I think it's getting thrown around as an option. One
like
of the things
you just decide to do it, and you go to closing, and it's done.
and it's good. Like it's not that simple. They take a little bit longer.
All parties
even,
have to be involved. Are on board, and in essence, you're qualifying for that assumable mortgage through the whoever the financial institution is that holds the seller's mortgage.
So let's talk about that. So if I have a buyer who says, I want to look into this, I want to assume the mortgage because they have a 2.9%. Who do we send them to? If it's just say a ABC Mortgage Company, do they have to call ABC Mortgage Company and find just a random lender to talk to and say, you're going to now be my lender to get me through this mortgage process?
And the seller has to be.
The seller has to be on board, get the contact information for their lender, the loan servicer.
Okay.
And then that's who they need to contact. So it throws in a little bit of a curveball with a buyer coming to a property that now they're not pre-approved. We're looking to assume a mortgage, so tell me who your lender is so that I can assume it, and then I'll go through this process to qualify.
And then there's the difference of the equity.
Just say, hey, we have these assumable mortgages, come get them.
Yeah.
But it's not that easy.
It isn't.
Not that case.
So one of the things I brought up is there's a new search. engine that like allows you to look up assumable mortgages. But as we were talking about, one of the reasons we before we started, the biggest problem with the assumable mortgage is like, where's the difference between the loan balance and the value of the property come from, right? So like a lot of times it's going to be from, the buyer's got to have the liquidity to cover the difference, right? But there's also other options out there that we were discussing, which it gets more complicated, but that's why you have to get involved. And like, these are good ideas, but they're also generally not going to take 30 days. They generally take a little bit longer in my experience.
Considerably.
Like
Yeah,
60,
exactly.
90.
Yeah.
60 to 90
60,
days.
90 days to do an
Yeah.
assumable. So would the seller, would it be best for me, I'm doing a listing and my seller says, I have a 2.9. I ask them, do you have an assumable loan? They say yes. Before we hit the market and start saying it's going to be an assumable possibility, should the whole process have already been done of our seller contacting their loan officer, giving them who the contact
Due
is,
diligence, yeah.
and then a buyer reaching out and seeing if they're pre-approved, and then they can come and look at the house? Because you really, like, it was a great point. If they're not pre-approved, like we always say, do you have a pre-approved letter? Well, we don't want to show you a house until you're pre-approved. Well, we don't want to have you go look at this house that you are excited about, is because you still have to be pre-approved through that lender for this process. So that's a lot of upfront stuff to do before you even start to look at the house.
Right.
Kind of similar to the buy down, program. Is your seller on board, before, with covering that cost associated with it.
Yeah.
So
I think too, part of it is, where are you at with your liquidity? Because let's say you do a secondary on it, right, to cover part of it. Some of those are only, 80% loan to value, 90% loan to value. Like, you still got to have liquidity to come in with like a down payment essentially, right, to cover that kind of a difference anyways in the first place. So even looking at it in that sense, to do an assumable and then you did a secondary, you would still need enough liquidity off the purchase price to put 20% down in most scenarios, right? Like, to even do it in the first place. Because if they can only do up to an 80% loan to value max on top of whatever the primary is, there's still 20% that needs to be coming in.
Right.
To
yeah,
down
if you're at
payment, right?
Depending on
95%.
who's providing that second
I
mortgage
was going
for
to say,
the
so
difference.
can they,
And what the
yeah.
rules are. Yeah.
Right.
So now we have the lender, the primary lender, the assumable loan, but if they do want to do the secondary to get the more of the cash outlay, they could go to any lender that they wanted. So they would have two lenders in the whole program to close.
Subject to the lender that's servicing the loan.
Correct.
The lender servicing it might be a requirement that the second mortgage goes through us, because we're going to still be servicing that first mortgage that's being
So
assumed.
yeah.
And that primary is in first position,
Yeah.
over the second.
Right. So there's just a lot of due diligence up front to
Variables
just not
and-
say it's assumable.
But plenty of ways and answers to get stuff done. That's the bigger goal of it, is there's still a lot of ways to do things, especially, my biggest concern a little bit is people are going to wait for everything to like kind of change. And that's almost like 3 months too late. So the people who've reached out to me here lately, they're looking, we're looking probably April, spring, stuff like that. And I'm like, we really got to hit the ground running mid-February. That's when the market keeps getting earlier and earlier and earlier, and you need to be ahead of it. We need to have a contingency plan of if we do have to pull the trigger a little bit early, because I just, all the data is just pointing the opposite direction of what the media points as a fear, in my opinion. Like, all of the data supports that this rates come down and people get buying power back and prices go back up, right?
And multiple offers
And
and
multiple offers.
and all that
way
stuff.
above list
Yeah.
that you have to do in case it's not appraising correctly. That's just cash out of pocket.
But if you can be ahead of the curve right now and start your process now to hit the spring market, you'll be light years ahead of everybody else, in my opinion, who just is like, third week of March, they're like, hey, we're thinking about buying, blah, blah, blah. And then they go out there and they're just going to get hit in the teeth right away with, like,
No
the market
inspections
is
of being
so
able
different.
to ask for that.
Yeah.
So, because gets back to what we were asking you. So you saw an uptick in people reaching out as soon as the rates went below 7,
Right.
and we just say that,
Imagine if it has a 6 in front of it. Oh, my
and
gosh.
as I said,
Right.
so it
Yeah.
did. But
Right, yeah.
if we get to anything like the low 6s next spring, it's just going to not be as easy for a buyer to buy as it is
Kyle,
right
to your
now.
point, with a pre-approval, it's good for 120 days.
Yeah.
So, getting the documentation submitted to your lender and ready to rock and roll from, you'd have from now till March,
Yeah.
you know, so.
So like these people, like I'm setting them up on searches now, so they can at least visually see what's out there, what pricing is, because they're going to see pricing and values change come spring, right? Like you're
And
going to
then they
see,
can know.
you're going to be able to pull the
Competition.
trigger quicker.
And they're
And-
educated to know
Correct.
what they have been seeing. I had a client who was going to buy maybe February or March, but I said, two things. One, to get a pre-approval, and two, I want to have the search going so you can kind of see. But the third part of that is our inventory is so low that the house that they want, the things that they need in a house is going to be few and far between. So watch it. And I can't guarantee that perfect house for you is not going to show up tomorrow. And darned if it didn't. It showed
Right.
up within a week. And thank goodness they were looking and everything else, because to say I'm going to be buying in March or April could be a problem in multiple ways.
Yeah, and we were talking before, like rent, it's become more and more difficult to rent. I mean, this
Rents
is
are going up.
right. This is the year. This is like the time of year where rents go up, right?
Right.
I'd almost rather eat breaking a rent, and eating the extra month or a month and a half that you have to pay, and it's going to cost you $3,000, versus the 15 to 20 is going to cost you in May. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Right.
And it's just based off the data and the experience, but like those are the discussions that need to be happening now, in my opinion. So I had somebody call me and they were like, I need to buy a house in 45 days. And I was like, well, it takes 30 to close, so we have 2 weeks to find a house, and you're not pre-approved. And so, we're like, we got to figure out your renting
Doing
situation.
those numbers, a lot of times it's February 1st, or my lease is up January 31st, and it's going to come a lot quicker than you think.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Real quick.
But it gets back to inventory, is because if they want to say what they're looking for is actually what they need, if the list is this long, they're probably not going to find a house in that
You have 2
next
weeks to
2
find
weeks.
it. Yeah, there's just no way. I can find you the best house that's close to that within 2 weeks. But like if we're going to
maybe.
be looking for 6 months, I can find you the house that you want.
They definitely have to have their wants and needs split out. Like, we have to have this.
100%.
These 4 items. The rest of them,
Well,
hope for.
because we do get back to 2021 and 2022, buyers bought because they just had to, and they're not happy with their houses today. We just don't want to see that. You don't want to see you just settle because you had to.
Right.
So that's where we just beg everybody to really start your process.
They did like rates, though. at
They
that
did
time.
like the rates.
That's why they jumped. So now
Right.
they've jumped and they're in a house they don't like. So they're, it's just, the wants versus your needs, and just see how much of that is changeable.
I mean, I've had sellers this year where, maybe they find a different agent. I mean, to my knowledge, they haven't, but I'm like, this is just not the move right now. Like, what are we doing? Like, this makes 0 sense for the same reasons. It's just like, what are we doing? And they're trying to jump into something that's going to be a worse situation, most likely.
Just so they can buy a house.
Just like a move.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, what are we doing right now? Like, no. Like, don't
Give,
get me wrong.
Give it some time, maybe work on your credit, or
Exactly.
save a little bit more. You could put more money down on the house.
You could
and
pick up
lower-
$60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in buying power, which gives you the ability to look at different houses that you can get a little bit less, or something that's been on the market, or whatever it may be, versus cramming into a house that you don't want, that
Right.
you're going to be in a situation where you have to sell because you outgrew it or you're not happy with it, and you're going to lose money. Like, that's just we've lived in this luxury the past 3 years, not even 5 years, where if you bought a house 2 years ago, like, you could sell it and you're going to be okay, maybe even make profit. Some people I had to make $100,000 profit in 2 years.
2021, yeah.
Right.
I don't know the percentage, but
It used to be 7 years. 5 to
Yeah, oh,
7
yeah.
years to break even. Break even. Not even
Right.
make a profit. Break even.
15-20% spike in 2021.
3 years in a row.
Yeah,
Right. So
that's wild.
I don't know. It's just all interesting. We try to educate people. I know you had some other stuff.
Well, we just wanted to say that there's options out there, the 2-1 buy down, the assumables, but it's not just like slam dunk ready to go. So getting to the third part is actually just getting a pre-approval so you know what you're ready and what you can and can't afford. And, you're going to give your guys' phone number out at the end, so you can just say, reach out to you and just get that pre-approval and be ready, because when you find the house you need or want, it's
don't
a
know when it's
perfect
gonna
one
come
for
along.
you.
Yeah,
When it comes along, like my clients, they had already done the process because that's just how I liked it to have. But the house was going to sell more than likely in 1 or 2 days because it was that cream of the crop type of house, why they liked it so much. And to then start to get the pre-approval letter, I know you guys are fast. I know, you probably hate those 7 o'clock calls at night, but we found the house we want to do. Now do the pre-approval. Just be prepared and do it. So
it's much better for them to get prepared and do it up front. I think consumers have this wrong in their head that getting a pre-approval really hurts their credit. And if they do another one, it doesn't. It really does a minimal impact on your credit. Mortgages are coded different with the credit bureaus. They know all the due diligence that we go through. It's not like a credit card where you go to Target and say, hey, you can get 10% off today if you apply for this new credit. They know there's no due diligence in that. So that's impacting your credit score almost immediately because you're opening new revolving credit lines. When you're doing a mortgage, it doesn't impact your credit that much. So it's much better. I tell people all the time, my biggest fear is that we don't get you pre-approved and the perfect house comes on the market. And while you're doing your pre-approval, somebody else is writing their offer.
And that we know that happens, so that's why we beg for that. And you just mentioned something about when we go to apply for a mortgage, the pure wrath of the phone calls that you get afterwards. So
trigger leads.
Yeah, so why does that happen? And we've got some information of how to stop that so you don't. Because when we go to you to get our mortgage, all hell breaks, excuse my French, but breaks loose.
We speak French, it's okay.
That's right. Bonjour. Yeah, so the trigger leads happened just a couple years ago. The credit bureaus, like most business, they're looking for how can we make more money. It's a profit center for them. Every time someone applies for any type of credit, they put those leads on the open market so any other lender with that type of loan can start calling them. So it's not something the lender sells. We don't sell your name. We're not putting it out there.
Yeah, because they come back at you for thank you
That's
so
all
much.
we do.
Right.
You sold my information.
It's like we did not. It's the credit company. So there are sites that they can go to ahead of time, and that they can.
Right, and that's just ahead of time before that
before they apply for a loan.
Before you pull it, because the other thing we were talking about, Kyle had mentioned, is that if somebody gets those phone calls, they might start answering them if they really do. I don't know how many do, and listen, and they go, we can beat that rate you have. We can do this, and it's just a bunch of smoke and mirrors.
Because they don't have all the data.
This
is the conversation.
You don't even want to talk to these people that are calling you, but anyway.
You encourage people though to I want people to get the best rate that they can, and you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
I want people to be educated and see what's out there. But what happens is there's mortgage companies or whoever, they'll call and they'll get verbal information over the phone, and they'll be like, we can do this and this and this and this, and then it actually gets, and then they switch over, and then it gets into underwriting, and they're like, yeah, no, and you're like, oh,
when you're
gosh.
2
And
weeks
that's the
in,
big, between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval,
Yep.
we're looking at your income, we're looking at your credit, we're doing a hard pull on your credit.
It's already partially underwritten.
Right.
Yeah.
And then assets, for down payment, closing costs, can you check all 3 of those boxes in order to buy the home? And it's totally beneficial for the buyer.
Yeah, because who do you know when you talk to them on the phone that's honest about how much they make? You know what I mean?
Especially self-employed.
People round up a lot these days. I still tell people I'm 6 foot and I'm 5'10" and a half. Who even says half? I mean, I'm 5'10". Let's just call it for what it is.
Right.
People round up.
And that happens all the time.
Well, most people can't calculate their income correctly.
Right.
That's just the nature of. You ask most people their salary, they don't know. They fill it out, and I see most of them. It's low. They don't know that they get paid biweekly, so they get 26 pays a year. So when you multiply that up, you're like,
that
wow,
is weird.
I guess I make more money than I thought.
You got 401k coming out. You got
we can
insurance.
help with commissions, overtime.
Yep.
Self-employed. Doing all the.
We like the
analysis
2-year
up front.
history for bonus and commissions, but there's.
We get somebody coming in and they've been there less than a year saying, no, I make an extra 60 in commission, and you're like, and I can use 0 of it, right?
And those guys,
but they're actually, that is what they make though also, right?
And then they're on and looking at houses, and then midway through, here comes the disaster.
Right. Now they've got an offer accepted. They love the house. They've spent money on an appraisal, and they've spent money on an inspection, and now they find out they can afford half of that.
Yeah.
And
well,
if the appraisal's completed,
That's a
they're
bad
out
day.
that money.
For that to get that far is a whole nother issue, because me as a listing agent, I get your letters, I'm calling you and I'm saying, this house is going to be closing, our counter is going to be accepted at this price. and I see you say pre-qual at the top, what have you done or
To
whatever,
underwrite it.
and they're like, oh, we're not really that far along. We're somewhere in that range.
It's good as gold, I promise.
Right. As a listing agent, I don't want my seller to get into that mess.
But it's
So-
also hard for an LO because an LO is never going to be like, yeah, man, like this is shaky at best. I'd walk away from this one.
Right,
You know,
right,
like
but if
there's
it's
just
it's looking at a pre-qual versus a pre-approval. I
100%.
just don't want to
Absolutely.
see a pre-qualification if you're going to make an offer on the listing that I have. But we get back to the trigger leads. So there is a website, if you guys are out there, before you apply for any of these. It's called optoutprescreen.com. So optoutprescreen.com. Put your information in there, and supposedly those
won't get
phone
spam calls.
won't happen. So just wanted
Hopefully,
to
it
get
will reduce them significantly.
Yeah, because
There's
you were
always-
even saying like you looked at the do not call list thing,
yeah.
and you're like,
So-
I've been on there since '08. You said, and like you still get them. Like
Yeah.
I'm afraid to even look because it'll just like I get so many phone calls. Are you still a realtor in Carmel, Indiana? I'm like,
Yeah.
first of all, if you don't know how to say it, like this is
Yeah.
a sales
you want
call.
to sell this,
Yeah.
this house that you live at 10 years ago?
Yeah, do
Right.
you still
Where
sell
they're-
real estate? And I'm like,
Damn.
just a little bit, you know.
What? Well, the do not call list. So I was reading more about that. And so if you're on the do not call list and you get a call,
Yes.
then you're supposed to go in and send them the phone number when they call. And I don't have time for that.
No.
So I just
Right.
block them on my phone. So all of this is just a random way of potentially stopping a little bit, but not all
Right.
of it. But
Yeah.
I know my client had a good amount of phone calls the next day because he didn't know about this.
Just being aware that it's not the lender selling it, that it's
Yeah.
the credit bureau selling it.
Right.
That's important to keep in
It
mind.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know they get mad at you.
Or the
It
agent.
was your fault.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Uh,
the agent too. Like
yeah.
I did it. And so we get back to another thing with title fraud, and how in the world are people stealing people's titles on houses? It's happening. You get stuff in the mail. If you get letters in the mail that your lender sent you, pay real strong attention to what you think is correct in
The
that.
fine print.
The big one that I see happen all the time is about property taxes. And I always get a picture of it from a client, and it's usually within 3 weeks of the closing. And it wants to talk about your taxes, your state taxes, your
Or buy
county
a home
taxes.
warranty.
Oh, home warranty is another big
and
one.
also, or buying
Credit,
get
life,
your-
and disability insurance. They
Yeah.
sell.
or buying your title.
Even after close.
Right.
Which
Or buying your
yeah.
your
title.
title was
From
given
the
to you,
mortgage.
but buy your title, and then that's not thinking.
If for the state and county ones, like the easiest thing is, just send your agent a photo of it, and they'll be able to take a look at it. But when I see them, it should be a city county building that it's being mailed to. Like if it's being mailed to a PO box, don't do it. Like it's
Right.
just that simple.
Well, and
a
also
valid
call your
address.
lender and say, "Did you send me that I need to do this?" But so in Hamilton County, they have what they call DoxPop, DOXPOP, Property Watch, kind of like LifeLock for your title on your home. And if you think that somebody is possibly doing this, I know this was actually where I saw this. It was coming through next door. Somebody was saying that their title got stolen, and the Attorney General came on and he mentioned that this is something that everybody can do for free. You can go on at hamiltoncounty.in.gov/DoxPop, DOXPOP, Property Watch, and that was where you can sign up to have a LifeLock type thing on your title. So if somebody goes in and does something with your title, you're immediately alerted. So nothing
It's
wrong.
not going to
with
stop it, but it's going to notify you immediately so you can get it
that it
shut down and
happened.
fixed.
Yeah,
Correct,
because
yes.
you don't want to. Because if it happened and you don't know, and it's like 6 years from now, you've had no title on your house, and you tell me you want to sell it, and I go in and we find out you don't even own the house anymore. So this will tell you immediately, so you can get it
It's a good
fixed.
security feature to have.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's free. Get in there and sign up for that. Just to protect your title, because people. Well, this gets.
I've
back-
never even heard of this until we brought it up today. When you told me, I
Right.
was like,
Me
somebody still
neither.
can steal title?
Right. Me
Outside
neither.
of like initial fraud of like during the transaction.
But
like
why
later,
wouldn't we
it's
sign
new.
up for this? I mean, it's free. Why not? But this gets back to it's so easy today for people to do this. I mean, we know a couple weeks ago, Chicago Title was completely locked down because of their cyber attack.
National issue.
So we have to
Right.
be very careful of all of this because people are doing this all the time. So
And
that's a
never
great
have
way.
your lender send wiring instructions prior to
Oh,
closing
no.
too. There's an issue there if they're doing that.
Yeah.
Right. I know a lot of buyers get upset with the fact that how they have to get their wiring instructions. Like, why can't I just get them?
I know it's a pain in the butt, but losing it all is a bigger pain.
Losing
in the
$100
butt.
grand
Yeah.
is not fun
That's
either.
right.
So, and I just want to remind everybody, if you bought today or this year, to get your exemptions filed, to actually check to make sure they were filed. Go to the county assessor. Most title companies do file your homestead, but you do want to make sure that
Double
happened.
check it. Yeah.
And it's a lot of money to lose if you
Let's
didn't.
see, like,
And
so
to make sure anytime you make any changes to your title,
yeah.
you need to file the homestead again.
Refinance, right?
If you refinance, you get divorced and you quit claim the deed to your spouse, that person needs to file their homestead. Or a lot of people have living trust, so they want to put their home in their trust for estate protection. You put, as soon as you deed it into your trust,
You need to
your
file.
exemptions fall off. You need
Yeah.
to refile your homestead exemption. So
And we don't have to do mortgage anymore in the state, so
Correct.
it's just
Just
homestead.
the
It's all
homestead.
rolled into. And then there's other ones. You know, you've got your veterans.
There's a
You've
bunch
got-
more, but not
You got your
everybody.
seniors one. So
Yep.
David, make sure you filed yours. This year. I'm just giving him a hard time. He's not that old.
Well, I will
But
just
there's a lot of
say,
exemptions.
I went to sell my mother-in-law's house for her. She'd lived in it for about 35 years, and went to check everything. No tax exemption was ever filed.
I did that. I mean, we were just talking about. I sold one maybe 5 years ago, and we sold it again like last year as a reload situation. And I did all of this, and, you know, I was just like, hey, make sure you do this. Make sure you do this. You know, they had moved from another state. Multiple, you know, they're like, hey, we're on it. You know, we get it. Like I did it. I usually notify people 60 days after, and then I notify them in December as well,
Right.
just to follow
Yeah,
up.
we're getting ready to do our
Yeah,
notifications.
and then they hadn't. Like for 4 years, they'd been paying 2% taxes on this. Like at the time, I think it was like a 480 house or something like that, which
Oh,
is
my.
that's a big swing.
Right.
And they're like, "What's wrong with the taxes?" I was like, "You tell me." Yeah, I mean, like to a certain extent, like I can't do it all, and I can't go file it, and I can't verify it for you. You know, like there is some due diligence on the part of the consumer to follow up on this stuff, and it's really easy.
Right.
It's really
Well,
easy.
the other thing,
Well, a lot
Especially
of
with
folks-
providing all this information.
Yeah.
well, the other thing about that is, I don't remember how long ago this happened, but was it 5 or 6 years that Indiana dropped all of the homestead exemptions?
Right.
And said everybody had to refile. If you did not do that, you have no homeowner's tax exemption, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of money. So, 5, 6 years ago, you lost your exemption. Did you physically refile it? Because if you didn't, you don't have one. It's very easy. Call your real estate agent. We can tell you if it's there. You can call the assessors and ask them if you have an exemption filed. It's worth that 10 minutes to make that phone call and find out, because you're going
It's
from
so
1%
important to
to
do it
2%.
this year too, before the end of December.
It's
If you
December
don't,
31st, yeah.
next year you're on the hook for it.
Right,
Like, that's just
exactly.
the
So if
reality
they do it by the 31st of December, it's retroactive back to January 1st of 2023. So it could save them thousands just by doing it this year if they didn't refile from 5 years ago
Yeah.
when they dropped them all.
And since we pay an arrearage, you
Yeah,
gotta do
They're
it.
set. If they
You
wait
gotta
until
do it.
January and file it, now they just pay double for 2023 again.
But they're good
Right,
for
so-
next year.
But they're good for
They're
when
good for
when their
next
25 bill comes.
But I mean, good rule of thumb is like if you have an idea of what your house is worth, just ballpark it. I mean, 1%.
true.
If it's
Yeah.
1%, you're good. You know, if it's 2%, and if
There's
it's
probably an issue.
there's an issue unless it's an
And
investment
then you
property
can always call the assessor's office and
and ask, right?
Yeah.
I mean, most of them are digital. You can just verify digitally, and then 3% is commercial properties, right? So
Yeah, so if, to make it understand, so if it's a $300,000 house and your taxes are $6,000 a year, you do not have a homestead
Right.
exemption filed.
should be
They
3,000 a year, so
3,000.
1,500 a half, right?
As long as it's your primary residence.
As long as it's your primary, yeah.
Yeah, and you can't have a homestead exemption on more than one house in Indiana, and if you're not living in it.
Yeah. Oh, dude, we see all types of interesting things. I see people, married couples. I mean, you're gonna love this stuff as LOs, but you know, we see married couples where one person's on and it's their primary, and then the spouse wants to get an FHA for an investment property, even though it's not the primary. But they, oh, dude, it's a thing, dude. It's a
Yeah.
thing. Don't act
Yeah.
all coy with me. Like
Yeah.
I know David knows it's a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
And
Yeah.
if they find out,
It's-
like that loan is due immediately, they can call it at any. So like I
well,
know
there's a
people are out there
small
doing
window
it.
with FHA and VA.
They
For
can
the most
verify.
part, you can just have one loan. You know, one FHA loan outstanding, one VA loan.
Well, this
So-
is when it's like a married, or I don't know. Anyways, it happens.
Having
works
two
itself.
exemptions.
It's fraud, first of all.
Having two exemptions could be an issue.
Yeah.
as
Oh,
well,
yeah.
Because then you're not only going to lose that, the note's going to be called due, and you have to pay off that whole mortgage immediately.
Yeah.
And there
Or
could
sell
be,
your home.
there could be some other issues, criminal
Right.
for fraud.
We see people, they think they're slick all the time, and that's why we have to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And advise them. So the dots have to connect.
Well, it is amazing what people think is going on with their house and what is really going on, because when we get the listing requests, when we pull it up and we have to call them and tell them, husband and wives, tell the wife you're not even on the title, you've never been. I mean, just take
Stuff
a quick
happens,
call.
yeah.
It's just really easy to just find out what your title looks like.
Sometimes it's just data entry errors. Like, I hate to say that, but I mean, it is. I mean, we got humans doing this stuff. Stuff happens.
And most of the county websites, it's easy for anyone to log on right now and see if they have an exemption in place, what their taxes are, who's listed in title, and how they're listed. Make sure their names are spelled correctly.
And another quick thing to just remind them that November 10th, your taxes were due. If you think you're in escrow, you might want to check and see. You can find out on the website. That'll tell you if it's escrowed or not. If it wasn't escrowed, your taxes didn't get paid.
Yeah.
You might not have paid them in May either. So
Most people,
just
though,
be
don't.
careful.
So it's weird if you're digital or if you're not. Like, if it comes in the mail, it usually is like written on the.
It goes across the
Yeah, it's written at like an angle, like kind of like there, but slightly transparent.
But
to a
those
certain
came
extent.
in, March,
Yeah, they came a
April.
minute
So
ago.
this
Yeah.
November time around, people forget. Like, they didn't get anything in the mail.
Right.
So that doesn't mean they're not due.
Yeah, and I don't even want to get into like people complaining about their property taxes going up and all, like it affecting affordability. I mean, I get it; it's a whole thing, but it also provides infrastructure. Like, that's a whole rabbit hole I don't feel like diving down into, because I have had a lot of people complain about how much their property taxes have gone up in the past 3
And
years.
some could be a mistake.
Some of it is.
It could be way out of line from
Well,
what
and
the
that's,
market is.
I have done
And you
market.
can appeal it.
Yeah, and I've done market analysis for people
You
who that's
can.
happened to. They said, my house is, we bought it for $350, and they came back, 2 years later and say it's now worth $6. I know that's not right, and I can do. I mean, literally, the assessors will agree with a real estate agent's complete market analysis. You do not have to have it.
I've seen whole
appraised.
neighborhoods affected. I have a buddy who used to be an assessor, and so they actually really only go do a hard one every now and then, right? And so what happens is
rare.
a formula is applied.
Trending.
Yeah.
It's called trending.
Yeah, exactly.
in the
And
market,
so,
yeah.
like, it cannot be accurate, and it can affect an entire neighborhood, and you may not know without looking at surrounding neighborhoods.
Unfortunately, we know, especially some neighborhoods, here's the semi-custom portion and here's the production side.
Yep.
And they blend it all
Oh,
into
yeah.
one.
Ooh.
So now you're on the production side where your house could be half the price.
And you're
of
getting
the
taxed
custom
like
home, and
nobody's
you're getting
business.
taxed like
Because
it's
of
in the
the other
custom
side,
side.
the other side of the tracks.
Exactly. So you need to
But yeah,
watch
so
that
if
as
you
well.
get your tax bill in March or April and you see that the reassessment, you do not think it's correct, you can reach out to realtors easy. We can tell that for you and make sure that didn't happen. Because if you really don't think it's correct, you should check into
Should
it.
appeal.
And it costs you, I mean, I do that stuff. Somebody sends it to me. I mean, I'm not trying to do like 600 of those, but, like, I can knock one out pretty quick. It's not
Yeah.
that big of a deal.
But I was shocked
Right.
that
Yeah.
they took it from me. Like, the assessor's office takes a realtor's
Fair market value.
assessment,
Yeah.
what
CMA
they
or
think.
broker's price opinion,
Yeah.
you'll take.
You do not have to get an appraiser. So,
Yeah.
well, I think we've touched on so much today. and
We have.
Yeah.
Thanks
It's
so
been
much
good.
for popping in, you guys. I know we grabbed
Absolutely.
you and just thought we'd
Fun
do
as
something
always.
fun.
What do you want for Christmas? Lower rates?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Lower rates would be
Fives.
The
So-
fives scare me. It just scares me. I mean, I'd love to see it, but
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. We did talk about that. Yeah, I mean, I know we're going to wrap it up, but you and I did briefly mention about that. Like, I think people think, like, I want higher values in houses. And I mean, I don't know if people think that, but you had a conversation where it's like, people are upset because, like, you're still human and you're, like, I like growth, but I don't like disproportionate growth and all these other things. And, like, I'll be honest, I don't care what a house is worth, like high or low. I would prefer for it to be lower because I don't want to put people in bad situations. But, like, I'm here to help people with movement of houses. I have nothing to do with why there's disproportionate growth in central Indiana outside of the fact, like, it was a very low cost of living, and it's become a very desirable place to live, especially with COVID and people being able to work remotely. And it's just it was a lower cost of living and is a very nice place to live. Our cost of living has gone up. It is still low, for the record, but it was such a rapid change for us here locally. I think a lot of people, I don't think they look at us as the problem, but sometimes I feel like they look at us as part of the problem, and like that's just not a reality. Like, I wish I was that powerful. I don't.
You can control the values.
Yeah. Like I just can't do that.
Right.
Well,
I want things to be.
Well, I think to your point earlier about the taxes, where some people that have moved from out of state look at their property taxes and say,
so much lower.
They're $7,000 a year.
East
like,
Coast,
what's
West
wrong
Coast,
with this? These are great.
California.
It's like they should be half that.
Yeah.
Chicago or
Our
like Texas.
Chicago,
You come from most of our surrounding states, our taxes are fractions of what the taxes are.
Well, there was just
We're the new destination.
We are.
Yeah, it is
Pros and
so
cons
true.
to that.
It is so
Right.
true. The amount of phone calls I get from all different parts of the United States, other countries. We want to move to Carmel. I'm like, how did you make that decision? You don't know anybody here. You don't have a family here. Why? Because we saw that it's
In
the best
Forbes,
place to
best
live.
place to live.
Yeah, it's hard. So one of the things that happened to me was, I was mentioning in public that I didn't appreciate the amount of traffic Carmel has had.
I saw that.
And I'm like, they got mad because, well, aren't you a realtor selling in Carmel? And
It's
I'm
your
like,
fault.
that doesn't mean I enjoy
Burn her
the
at the
extra
stake.
traffic. And like somebody's like saying, maybe it's a city of 100,000. The whole thing is there is rapid growth going here, and only because I'm selling here, I'm helping people buy and sell here. But that doesn't mean I agree with it. I don't agree with how it's happening and why it's happening, and the fact that we didn't used to be like this. And I understand growth, and I do. But we as realtors don't sit here and go, please ask me to sell houses or buy houses with you because we enjoy making it less desirable with traffic and everything like that. I just was like, what? Because I sell houses here, I shouldn't be having an opinion on where I'm
traffic.
selling?
Right.
So anyway.
Well, you're not selling houses, the $6 million condos.
Oh, yeah.
Carmel. I saw
know.
that picture.
I know. I'm just like, well, I mean, you're wrong, but.
Right.
But it is funny. I just made me wonder, what is the assumption you have of us as realtors in this industry of being involved somehow and how it's
We
all
catch a
going?
lot of heat and blame for things that just we're just not a part of. But I get it. I mean, it is what it is. And police officers and judges get
income for a real estate agent around $38,000
right.
a year.
Well,
They think everybody makes $1 million a year, and that's just
and
not.
it was thrown
I
out
wish.
that was it, and I
Right.
just was
We'll take
like,
it.
They
I'm
think
like,
none of us work. We all just have fun.
right,
all the time.
and making a lot of money. But I was like, I don't even know. Well, I didn't want to get into that part of the conversation, but we're just making an average living. But the amount of things that people think is happening is just so out of whack.
Part of that's on agents. I'll be honest. Our industry as a whole tends to, first of all, everybody likes houses and likes seeing stuff that other people have, and whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. So there's a fascination with it. I get that. I understand there's a fascination with our careers. And I do love what I do. I work a lot. I work more than I work like 80 hours a week. That's just the reality of my life. But in recent history, especially with reality TV and stuff like that, it has created it to make it look like it's this lifestyle that it isn't. And the problem is, when you watch that on TV,
Well, yeah,
that's
but
a
where
show.
is it
That's not the
filmed?
reality.
L.A.,
Right.
Yeah.
New York, Dallas. It's not the Midwest. But anyway, that's
a whole,
digressing.
don't get me
so-
started on that.
Well, let's do our stats really fast.
Yeah.
Really fast. I'm gonna do.
Like Micro Machine Fast. You remember that? Whatever happened
Yeah.
to the Micro Machine guy?
What'd you say?
There was a car that almost backed through the window here, so we were a little concerned for a minute. I was ready to
You
move
almost
back.
hit the. Did he hit the sign?
You
with
were
his
gonna
bumper?
move back, but not warn me. I saw you going
Tahoe.
away.
I was going to pull you.
I don't know if my
We're all
insurance
good. We're
covered it.
safe.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah,
very
we're-
much for thinking of that. Anyway, so Carmel, 27 houses hit the market last week. So this is December 5th that we're looking at the past 7 days. That's a lot for December, I thought. But
Yeah.
anyway, in the pendings, 13 houses pended last week. 3 of them were the ones that just listed. Average days on market for pending in Carmel, 41. So we're hanging in about that, but it's not that 4 or 10 everybody used to think was happening.
Still at 98% list to sale, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
45 days.
Yep. So still, just don't think you're going to be selling immediately, and some agents need to tell their sellers that, not to worry about if it's not sold in 10 days. Sold 92 sold in the past 30 days. 25 of those were new builds, and average days on market was 36. So it's going up a little bit, but it is December. Westfield, we had 35 hit the market. 21 of them were new builds. And one of them pended, but a total of 22 pended over the past 7 days. So average days on market there for the past 7 days, 52. 101 sold in the past 30 days. 65 of those was new builds. So Westfield is so heavy on new builds. We've been saying this forever on what they're doing. So only 36 resales sold in Westfield. So if you're a seller, you need to really understand your market. You are competing against new homes 100%. Just very strong competition. So you need to understand what we were just talking about. What can you offer as a seller to be competitive with the new builds that are out there? Westfield, you're in that pocket. So in the past 30 days, average days on the market was 34. Like I said, the past 7 days, it was 52. So going up there. 98% list to sale ratio still. Zionsville, 6 hit the market. 3 of those were new builds, and a total of 8 pended in the past 7 days. So we took away all those 6 that hit the market plus 2. Average days on market in Zionsville for the past 7 days was 66. 28 sold in the past 30 days, and 53 were average days on market. So they're kind of high, even with their low inventory. That's kind of weird, and not a lot of new builds. And then 99% list to sale ratio. So that's for those towns.
Well, I think Zionsville, even though it's like that, I tend to think Zionsville in particular tends to be a specific buyer as well, like their buyer pool. It's a different kind of city. I love Zionsville, but it feels more laid back and sleepy a little bit than like Carmel and Fishers, which is why I actually love it. It's got brick lined streets. I mean, so does Noblesville and stuff like that. But Zionsville tends to attract a different buyer, and that's just not everybody. But the people who move there back to the inventory don't ever leave there either, right? So it's just an interesting kind of like micro pocket up here on the north side. So for me in Fishers, I had 16 go on the market. 3 of those pended, so 13 are still active, but I actually had 13 pinned for the week, so we're just really not making any room with inventory. Averages on market is 45, with the median is 33, but there's 136 on the market. And in Noblesville, we had 20 go on the market, only 3 pended, so 17 of those are still active, but I had 21 pinned, so negative inventory again.
Both towns.
Yeah, and I'm at 38 days on market, 20 for the median, and we're at like 139, and I mean, if I keep trending in this direction, like let's say I don't even like having the negative inventory ones where I'm just picking up 2 and 3, I mean, it would take over a year to even have any decent inventory, you know, and I just don't see that happening. And this is winter, you know, I mean, it's just not there. So I don't know. I know we preach it, but I just think the market is much different than what people actually are anticipating, or at least predicting how it's going to go. But I do agree, like if you're going to buy right now, you know, when I'm representing a seller, you know, I'm preaching these stats. We're going to be fine, 98% list to sale. This is how many days on market. But I promise you, when I represent a buyer, I'm trying to beat that price all day because I want to see how educated the list agent actually is, right? Or what,
Absolutely.
or how panicked the seller actually is because they're listening to the media over their agent. So I get
agent
it. I
isn't
totally
telling
get it.
them, because I've had agents come to me and
Yeah.
say, "What am I going to do? It didn't sell this weekend." I'm like, "Your
Stay
average
on the
days on
market."
market's
Yeah.
40 days." Tell
Yeah.
your seller that up front, so they aren't asking you and begging you to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, there's one we're paying attention to. I won't even say where it is, but it was like it dropped $50,000 in Carmel in 7 days, and I'm just like, what?
And back
I mean,
to
that
the
may be
2-1
we
buy
gotta
down,
move
maybe.
right away or something.
But 2-1 buy down would have been even a
Right,
better.
could have been a tool
Oh my
to
gosh.
Yeah.
help that bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just tough. It's just really tough. You just really got to be more educated than ever. But there's plenty of stuff out there. You know, I mean, stuff's still selling, stuff's still listing. You know, I've still got people getting good deals.
It's more important than ever for the buyers to work with agents that are going to run comps on the houses that they're going to make offers. and really study, not just on the sell side.
Because we're seeing, that's one thing I noticed is if a buyer comes in and asks me to show them a house and it's been on the market for like 60 days, and I see those price drops, and now we're here, and that's why it just fell into their price range.
You may get $40,000 in equity right off the jump.
But could you imagine if we had jumped and I didn't know the market and I didn't know what was going on, and we took it that first few days it was on the market and thought, oh, we have to make a full price
Fly
offer.
right off. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, whatever. I just got one. We bought it for a certain price, and it appraised for $15,000 over what we bought it for, and so they have equity going in, but that was one of those where the price was dropping, and I said it's still not where it should be.
Right.
So running comps, like people think you only do that for sellers. Absolutely no.
Every time for buyers.
Every time. And before you
Every
go
time we
see
write
it,
an offer. How's that?
Right.
Well,
That would never work if I wrote on
Well,
every house. we
Yeah,
looked at,
exactly.
but-
Well, I mean, even before I go see it, if I'm questioning it, I'm going to tell them, I'm like, there's no way we're
Yeah.
going to see this because they've only been on the market 10 days and they're 50,000 over where they should be. I won't let you write an offer until we're in the comps range we should be. Seller is not going to accept it, but I will call the agent and say, will they look at a lowball offer? And if they go, yeah, we'll do anything right now, I'll go show it. But if they say, no, we want list price, I'm not even going to show it because that gets the buyer upset if they really like it.
Right.
Or they want to write a full price list because they really like it. And I know that they didn't pay the correct amount for it. So that's a whole nother day.
Cool. Well, if anybody needs to get a hold of you guys, why don't you let them know how to get a hold of you?
Cell phones 317-509-7772. My email address is Ross.bromstrup, BROMSTRUP @tuckermortgage.com.
You got a Snapchat handle or anything you're trying to give out? Okay. What about you, David?
And I'm David.Mccoige at 317-752-1192.
And I'm Kyle Morris with Morris Property Group in FC Tucker. It's 317-649-5122.
And it's Shelly Walters with the Shelly Walters Realty Group. My cell phone's 317-201-2601. Thank you so much for watching the indie housing market with this week, and we'll be back next week. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
Thank you.